This video is a quasi-continuation of my previous video, so if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend taking the time to do so before you watch this one, but it's not entirely necessary, it just better helps you understand. Also, thank you so much for the support on the last video. I thank everybody who left a comment, liked, subscribed, or even just watched to the end. With that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Answering your comments from last video. I got a lot of different comments, and initially I was answering them with my own comments, but that got very confusing, and leaving all these explanations without actual visuals to follow up is probably only going to create more confusion. Okay, so before we read comments, I need to get 3 things on the board. 1, you probably don't understand time travel as well as you think you do, and that's fine because it's really confusing and I barely understand it sometimes too. 2, causal loops can't exist. If you need an explanation, it's later in the video, you'll see when it happens. 3, any conditions you add to the burrow need to either be corroborated by an episode of Miraculous or not contradicted by an episode of Miraculous. Now that that's laid on the table, let's read comments. This first comment is from Go, and for time's sake, I'm not going to read any comments in this video, so if you want to read, just pause and read, but I will be summarizing their points and trying to do a good job of doing so I don't end up strawmanning anybody. So in this comment, Go is trying to explain the Dark Castle loop and trying to reason why it makes sense. Go also later replies to my comment that points out why this is wrong by saying the loop makes sense, except causal loops can't make sense. Here's an explanation as to why they can't make sense using The Flash as an example. In season 1 of The Flash, Barry, Caitlin, and Cisco enter a room where they see a newspaper from 2024. That's 10 years into the future, okay? Cisco makes note that in this newspaper, they see the Flash, and that Flash suit in 2024 has a brighter red on the suit, and it has a white background on the emblem. So, what people who don't understand time travel think happens is, in the future, Cisco made the alterations to this suit, and when this version of Cisco looks into the future, he sees that idea and adds it, so that when the future version happens, the same past version will add those alterations. Except this idea came out of nowhere. Why? Because the 2024 version of Cisco didn't just have this idea and made it. The 2024 version of Cisco adds the brighter red and the white emblem because he saw it when 10 years earlier he looked at this future newspaper, this exact same moment that we're watching in the show, and he saw that in 2024, he added the brighter red and the white emblem. Well, where did that 2024 version of Cisco get that idea? He got it from the exact same moment we're watching right now, where 2014 Cisco looks into the future and sees that he adds the brighter red and white emblem. These moments are happening simultaneously. Who gave who the idea? Nobody gave anybody the idea. It isn't this idea was formed by 2024 Cisco and then the loop is made. The loop always existed, except causal loops can't always exist. Why? Because the idea originates out of thin air. The loop isn't started from an idea. The idea came out of nowhere from the loop. That's why causal loops can't exist. This explanation also suffered from a burrow problem where how can Bunnyx and Bunnybug be in the same burrow? Like how can Bunnybug at 5:05 give 5 PM Marinette the idea of the party if Bunnyx is still in the burrow because 5 PM Marinette hasn't received the Bunny Miraculous from Bunnyx yet? And it's that exact same problem at the end of the episode. Next up we have a comment from P96 who says that they can communicate via modification of their Miraculous, like present versions of Miraculous know how to communicate with each other, which I'm willing to accept, but then there causes a whole other bunch of problems which I explain in my reply. When it comes to the modification of present Miraculous being able to connect with present Miraculouses, then there becomes a problem with Burrow not having a time to conform to, because even if there's a notification on the call, Burrow needs to conform to the present or else the London special can't happen. There's also another problem where even if the Burrow conforms to the present and you want to say that the Bunnyxes meet because they all jump into one Burrow made by, I don't know, 20-year-old Bunnyx, then there becomes another problem. In evolution, we clearly see that using 20-year-old Bunnyx as a reference, a past version of the Miraculous jumped into the same burrow she is in. That creates a massive problem. This means every Miraculous connects to the same burrow, but that can't be true, and they all meet, and the burrow conform to the present. This all can't be true at the same time. And same when P96 says that the future versions of Bunnyx are not canonical, which is not corroborated by Miraculous. The future versions of Bunnyx are canonical because their memories are what has to happen. In Cat Blanc, Bunnyx remembers Marinette not going through with giving Adrian the gift, so when she does, she has to make sure that it goes through the way that she remembers or else there's a problem. Cat Blanc happening. In the London special, the two older versions of Bunnyx know what's going down because they've lived this exact scenario. They're canonical. In Time Tagger, Bunnyx remembers young Alex waving away with the pencil in her hand, because if it doesn't go down exactly like how she remembers, there's a problem. These older versions are canonical. To anybody that commented that the burrow actually does connect to multiple timelines, there's a problem because Miraculous doesn't corroborate this at all. It actually contradicts it by both the London special and Cat Blanc. People said, well, Lila's wish maybe rewrites the universe, which rewrites multiple timelines, so that's why all the portals disappear in the burrow. But then there's a Cat Blanc problem. When Cat Blanc triggers the end of the universe, every portal goes to static. But that's not rewriting the universe, that's ending the universe. There are timelines where Cat Blanc doesn't do that. So why does every portal go to static? That means the burrow has to connect to the same timeline. So anybody who said that it connects to multiple timelines, Miraculous directly contradicts this. There's also a few comments that said they think there's one burrow, but that's impossible. This is because in Dark Castle, Bunnybug and Bunnyx are in the burrow at the same time, yet they don't see each other. So how could that happen? Well, burrow has its own timeline. Don't worry, we'll get there. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, I want to highlight this comment by GalaxyBoy444. And if I'm being 100% honest, this is the only way that burrow can work, and it still has a problem. So the main problem is Fluff and other Kwamis don't have control or memory of what happens when they transform. Yes, I know there's an inconsistency like in Kuroneko, but the rule is Kwamis don't know what happens when they're in there. But burrow having some kind of consciousness to where it controls itself is the only way it works, because there is no concrete way for burrow to work. There is no rule you can set and it abide by everything. It has to be flexible, because there are episodes when burrow is affected by time and there are episodes where it's not. There are episodes where it looks like there's one burrow and this episode where it looks like it's multiple. And as much as I don't like it, it's really the only way burrow can work. With flexibility, you can't have rigidity, which I don't like because having strict rules makes logic way more sound. For the moment you've probably all been waiting for, does burrow have its own timeline? Short answer, it can't. Long answer, get ready. Burrow having its own timeline adds a laundry list of conditions we have to answer, so I'm going to try to go about that in the simplest way I can. Okay, first up, can you control Burrow's timeline? This one is a hard no, because if you could, then you could technically freeze any Bunny Miraculous holder in the Burrow, and that's not how Burrow functions. We know when you jump in, Burrow's time is flowing. Next up, how do you enter Burrow? When you enter, you would have to jump into the timeline of the Burrow at its current moment, and you're free to manipulate the Miraculous Ladybug timeline. But you can't enter a past or future moment of the Burrow, because again, this technically means you hold power over the Burrow and can freeze any Miraculous hold, and we know that isn't the case, so you have to jump into the present Burrow moment. Next, are there multiple Burrows with their own separate timelines? This has two possibilities. Either there's an infinite number of burrows or you make one every time you enter. There's also the possibility of both, but that has its own laundry list of problems. First, it can't be the second condition because in evolution, Monarch's present day Bunny Miraculous opens a burrow in which 25-year-old Bunnyx initially opened. If there's an infinite number, then technically Monarch could have jumped into burrow number 7582 and he would never be found by Ladybug or Cat Noir. Oh, well maybe he didn't know he could do that. Then there's another problem. How do Ladybug and Cat Noir keep entering the same burrow that 25-year-old Alex is frozen in? The only way this could work is if, like previously stated, the burrow has consciousness or if Fluff would know or something like that, but again, that's not concrete, that's flexibility. Even though this is contradicted by the story, Kwamis don't know what's happening when they are transformed. They have no control, they have no memory of what happens. Yes, I know there's some moments where that isn't the case, but generally speaking, the rule is when Kwamis are being used, they don't have any control over anything and they have no memory. Next, for the assumption that Burrow has its own timeline to work, there has to be one Burrow, and you can't have control over the timeline that Burrow has. But then that causes more problems. For starters, Dark Castle is still a major pain in the neck. If time is flowing in the Burrow and you can't control it, then you would always jump into the present version of Burrow relative to your position in the present. That means time is still flowing in the Burrow, which means when Bunnybug pops up out of the Burrow, she should still see Bunnyx in the Burrow, but she doesn't. You can't control Burrow's timeline, meaning you have to jump to Burrow's present, but in Burrow's present at Dark Castle, Bunnybug and Bunnyx should be there, but they aren't. Only one is. This means Burrow can't have its own timeline, because any way you slice it, there are too many problems. You could always do the, oh well there's multiple and there's infinite and you could open whenever you want. And oh yeah, Monarch didn't know that you could do multiple, and so yeah, technically you could hide and burrow, and you could always alter the conditions. You can be that kid who changes the rules anytime he loses. That doesn't equate to good writing. That doesn't equate to sound logic. That doesn't equate to verisimilitude. It equates to poor foresight, bad writing, inconsistent logic, and a lack of care. Thank you to everybody who commented, and if you got confused even once during this video, drop a like and subscribe.